Um, this is from slashfilm.com. And this is here's the title of the article is Netflix and Apple have considered buying MGM as the streaming wars continue. It says the streaming wars are really heating up now that Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus is a key player alongside the likes of Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. They'll soon get even more crowded with the upcoming arrival of Peacock from NBC Universal and HBO Max from Warner Media. But not every content provider out there has the money to create their own streaming service, which means some studios are in the market to work out deals for their content libraries, or perhaps even selling the entire studio. That's what MGM might be looking to do. They're having conversations with Netflix and Apple. They've already taken place. Some of the notable content that MGM has includes the James Bond franchise, Mad Max, Rocky, including Creed, RoboCop, and Pink Panther. So this is kind of interesting. So we've kind of touched on this before, that the first casualty of the streaming wars might have already happened, which could be Fox. Because Fox basically decided they let themselves be acquired by Disney, in large part because they didn't think that they thought they were way behind the curve. One of the things that we brought up in one of our previous episodes was that they were really upset that they didn't get Star Wars, because that seemed like a natural fit for them. I mean, Fox used to distribute Star Wars, so it's like, how did Disney get Star Wars instead of Fox? And there's probably a huge behind the scenes story of how and why that happened. But once that did happen, Fox sort of realized that they're kind of out of the game. And so their content has essentially been acquired by Disney. Although that does not include the Fox network or Fox News, Fox Sports. There's still Fox. It's just that basically their content, a lot of their IP, all that kind of stuff, like the 20th Century Fox stuff, is now Disney. So MGM, the rumor is that MGM is in a similar place right now, that they might be looking to get to sell because they're not situated very well as far as streaming platforms go. Now, the other option for them, of course, is to simply license their IP. They don't necessarily have to allow themselves to be bought out and become part of another company. We do have a comment from Ronnie here. He's saying hopefully not Apple. He doesn't want to see Apple take MGM. So I think Apple would be very interested in MGM simply because of all the big players. I think Apple has the least amount of IP right now, and they need more content, right? I think that's probably the position that they're in right now. That's why they're so interested. So we'll have to see. One of the things, it's not addressed directly in this article, but it does remind me, there's a big rumor that CBS actually might be thinking about selling Star Trek. I don't know if you've heard that. And the rumor is that Peacock would be very interested in that. And then that even gets into the whole McFarlane thing, because McFarlane just made a big move to NBC. A lot of the Orville people have been talking about this. So a lot of these content providers, a lot of these guys with a lot of IP are not situated that well for the streaming wars, and they are probably going to be looking at the very least at licensing deals with some of the bigger players, or they might just sell.
It's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out in the big picture. I wasn't too surprised to see, because MGM has apparently been having money problems for quite some time. So it only seemed to make sense that someone might come in and, snatch up all that great content. For example, there was the RoboCop reboot film that had Michael Keaton and the guy from
Altered Carbon.
Yes, guy from Altered Carbon, whose name I can't remember, who also played Rick Flag in the Suicide Squad movie. It's actually a pretty good actor. Which that RoboCop movie has one truly, truly great scene. And it's really powerful. And he played that scene so incredibly well. Anyhow, enough about that. But RoboCop is a great IP. it still has, in my mind, tremendous potential. And then, oh darn it, the guy that did, what's his? God, I hate when I get like this. Normally, I'm not like this on the show, so everyone bear with me. The gentleman, I think he's from South Africa. He's a director.
Neil Blomkamp?
Yes, Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah.
Neil Blomkamp was supposed to developing a RoboCop film actually for MGM, and had been in development for quite some time. And just recently, he just kind of pulled out of it, and it's not going to happen. But when you look at James Bond, they've got a lot of great content. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. And Eric brings up a good point. If these different companies can license different people's content, and the company can basically be in a licensing business, a lot of people would say that Marvel and DC, that's what they're in. They're in the licensing business. But if MGM wants to stay whole, license their content is going to be a great way to do that. But also, too, they need to take some of this IP and continue to evolve and create new versions of it in order to maintain its value, in my opinion.
I see Patrick's comment there. It says, licensing seems fine, but a wholesome sell-off? I see regret in some companies' future. And I think you're already seeing that. I think that's already happened, like with Fox. So it will be interesting to see how they go forward with this. But one thing might be interesting for some sci-fi fans is this might be the way that you actually get a Stargate series again, though. I'll just throw it out there, because if Apple does acquire MGM, they might be interested in doing that, whereas MGM just doesn't appear to have the money to do it. They're struggling. So they've been struggling for a while, and that's why a lot of their properties are kind of lying dormant. So you never know. You never know. So ultimately, it's a hard thing because we've talked on this program. We've had some disappointment with Star Wars and Disney's treatment of Star Wars in general. So what happens when MGM theoretically sells RoboCop or Rocky? You know what I mean?
Right.
What happens? Are those properties going to be treated with respect, or are they just going to become another label to slap on a far inferior product?
Right.
You just don't know. So, but I would say that probably your best bet at getting a Stargate series is actually if MGM sells it. Don't you think?
I agree. I think that's
So
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, though. It's that slapping the label on an inferior product, and with the streaming services, it's just like throw as much spaghetti at the wall as possible, and we'll see what sticks and works and whatnot. And every once in a while, there's like a diamond in the rough that totally works. You get Stranger Things out of Netflix, you get Handmaid's Tale. You're starting to see like some good quality out there, but then think about all the precursors to that, and it's one of those things. It's are they gonna make Stargate work? Is there gonna be a filter on there that's actually gonna say, hey, you know what, this will work, this won't work, we need to edit it, we need to make sure that we're not just throwing content out there for the sake of branding and labeling. But that's just going to be either a turning point within the streaming wars or a casualty. But hopefully it's something that's beneficial that comes out, something that they learn how to cultivate and work on as this continues.
And you would think that MGM and a lot, because for example, I like to gamble from time to time. I don't know if that's good to admit here on the show, but I like to go to the casino, and I'm always seeing versions of the Wizard of Oz slot machines. They're freaking everywhere, and they keep doing all these different versions, and those kind of machines are very popular. So MGM is used to licensing to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. James Bond. They licensed James Bond.
Yeah. So you'd think that they would know that when you're looking at making money and fighting or being a part of the streaming wars, that just being smart about how you handle your licensing, that you can stay afloat that way, and you can make money that way. I don't know. That's because, like I said, there's a lot of people who would say that that's what Marvel and DC are in. They're in the licensing business. So,
but they're also part of mega corporations. You know, DC is part of Time Warner, and you know, Marvel is part of Disney. So they both allowed themselves to be acquired. Or DC long ago, DC was acquired. You know, Marvel's within recent memory, but
maybe even the term assimilated would be even a little bit more appropriate.
That would be appropriate for our show, absolutely. Yeah, and that is kind of what happens, right? So, you know, the streaming war to me is going to go one of two ways. Either somebody's just going to completely dominate and basically destroy everybody else, or it's going to be this massive bubble, and it's going to be this big mess of charred, bloody bodies at the end, you know, and somebody's going to pick up the pieces, and it'll be cable all over again, you know. They'll just pick up the little pieces of content that are still viable, and they'll package it all together nicely, and it'll be like cable all over again, you know. So that's how I see it. So
I'm curious to see if there will be any studio or intellectual property that will have the unique trajectory that Captain Marvel had. You know, the original Captain Marvel, the big red cheese, which they now call Shazam. You know, Fawcett Publications, which was actually a very successful publisher during the Golden Age. Captain Marvel was a Fawcett publication. There's a lot of other characters that some people have never heard of, such as Bullet Man and Bullet Girl, and well, anyhow, I'm getting off on a tangent. But the point I wanted to make was this: Captain Marvel was owned by Fawcett. National Periodicals, which eventually became DC Comics, actually sued Fawcett Publications because they said that Superman was essentially Superman was the original character, and that Captain Marvel was basically a ripoff of that.
Yeah,
it's so interesting because basically National Periodicals won that lawsuit, and Fawcett Publications was essentially put out of business. And then Fawcett just kind of sat around, and a lot of the trademarks actually lapsed. That's how Marvel was able to acquire the name Captain Marvel and actually use it for Carol Danvers and, of course, Monica Rambeau, is because they were able to acquire the naming rights or the trademark for Captain Marvel, which is why he can't have his name anymore. They have to call him Shazam. But the actual character and the content, the intellectual property, was eventually acquired by DC when they bought the remnants of Fawcett Publications and actually brought it in-house. So I wonder if we might see some weird permutation like that, where a very, very valuable IP and the naming rights, like someone loses a streaming wars and something just sits around collecting dust, and you know what I mean? The rights lapse and someone's able to snatch it up and do something with it. There's a lot of characters that have fallen in the public domain for that basic reason. So I'd be curious to see how this all falls out, and if any of this content eventually, you know, winds up, you know, with the name and the IP in different parts actually broken apart and a part of different things. We'll see.
Yeah. I'll leave the last word with one of our viewers here, Patrick. And he said, but one show or IP should not be cause for a company to buy off another company. The potential new owner needs to look at all the content owned by the potential seller before making the purchase. Got to think big picture, no pun intended. And you would think they think that way, but you know what, Patrick? They don't all the time think that way, because I could totally see a company acquiring another company essentially for one piece of IP. I think that there's some precedence for that. So we'll see. We'll see if that, you know, how that all turns out. I mean, when you talk about MGM, you're talking about a massive catalog, you know. So I don't necessarily think MGM would be bought, you know, simply for Wizard of Oz or for, you know, even James Bond or something. Well, maybe James Bond. You know what I mean? I don't know. But I do think that a lot of times that's what happens. And then kind of what you were talking about, Dave, is what happens is, yeah, they buy the entire catalog, but they really only care about one or two things. And then what happens to everything else? Everything else just lies dormant, you know, and it's not utilized. And it's just dead. It's basically dead in the water at that point. So that would be my concern, because I do think that certain executives and people in these companies are looking at these companies specifically for one property, that they're thinking one or two properties. Oh, we could do something with this. We could do something with this. So let's just buy the whole company. And, you know, the 20, 30, 40, 50 other things they could care less about. And they're not going to develop.
Right.
And those things are just going to become dead, you know? So there's that side of it too.
This is like those comic bundles they used to have at the gas station, where it was like one side was Spider-Man, the other side was Captain America, and there were like 8 comics in between that no one wanted to read, but you had to buy the whole thing to get those two anyway. Like that's kind of how it feels sometimes. And yeah, I mean, you know, we'll see. I think there's, you got to be, big picture. You got to think about the long term, but yeah, then it goes back to quality. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this shakes out.
But see, those gas station 3 comic bundles for like $1 or $3 or whatever were great, because you would open them up, you get the 2 that you knew on the end, and then on the inside, like I would find something like, Innovation published a Quantum Leap comic book series. I didn't know that. This is issue 3. I'm going to go find the other ones. So you never know.
Yeah, there were definitely gems in there for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But like not all of them. Oh, sweet.
Ronnie says that's still happening, but at Walmart. And I think he's right. I think actually I saw one of those comic bundles at 5 and Below. 5 and Below had one of those comic bundles, but I think it was all kind of mainstream, like all Batman or something like that.
Right.
So those things actually do still exist. Those little bundle comics things, those discount comic.
Yeah. Oh. Bum, 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 bum.
And now they're more expensive.
Yeah. They are. But I mean, that's how I would learn about, like when I was a kid. It's like, oh, there's a Speed Racer comic, or you know, every once in a while you get something like, oh, Aztec Ace. What the hell's that? You know, so you get all kinds of strange stuff. But sometimes like, oh wow, there was a Fright Night comic book series. That's friggin' awesome. I gotta go track those down. So, but yeah, I bought it for the Batman comic. But you know, Fright Night's cool. I'll go run those down. Gives you something to do, I guess.
Right on.
Very cool.